Hello, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about contract mistakes that are hurting your business. More importantly, they're costing you money. Okay? So, if you're new here, my name is Taylor Darcy from Think Legal, where I help you create the business of your dreams. So welcome. Leave a comment in the chat. Let me know where you're from, where you're joining me from. I'd love to know. And we go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. So please stop in to join me. I'm going to be mixing things up in a bit about, it's going to be more of a, we're going to change the name. It's going to be office hours. I don't know. Thinking about it. Anyway. So yeah, contracts. If you've watched any of my other videos, which you may not have, but you might, contracts are one of the most useful things that you can have as a business. People don't spend enough time and energy. Wow, Gabriella, she's from Paris, France. That's awesome. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. So a contract is, I mean, I know this is pretty basic for most people, but is an agreement between two people, right? Or more. You can always have more people, but there needs to be at least two parties for there to be a real contract. And these mistakes, we're going to go in descending order. So some of them are more detrimental than others, but they can be fixed. Businesses, especially small businesses, do not spend enough time on their contracts. They don't. They think that that's one of the last things that they think of, but it should be one of their first. So, number one, we're going in reverse order. So I guess there was 10. Okay, this is 10. Broad indemnities that favor your clients. Okay. An indemnity is just something that says if something goes wrong, we'll cover you. Now, I'm not saying it should be crazy one-sided either way, but you should restrict your indemnities unless there's a real reason. You should keep them pretty narrow for your benefit as your business. It's just a much safer. It gives you more opportunity for growth if things go wrong, which can. So think of like a wedding photographer is the reason why this applies. Like one of them, just give you. If, in the old days when you had to develop film, you could take all the shots that you wanted, but then if you had somebody sent out for processing and then the development went wrong, you're technically on the hook, which means even though it was a third party, you didn't do it. It wasn't your fault. Understandably, you relied on a vendor. That's okay. But if you have this indemnity clause where they should be going after that vendor, they can come after you. Or you have to go after that vendor instead of the photographer. Who's harmed by that? Well, the family that you took the pictures of, right? So it should be that the indemnity is for your own issues, right? Not third party. That's just an example. That your individual situation is going to differ depending on what you are choosing to contract. Okay, so don't think that that's what you have to do. The next thing is, so this is number 9. Number 9, not considering the best way to resolve disputes in advance. This is so key. This is one of those ones where it's like, I had a hard time deciding where to put this because of how important it is. Disputes happen. You never know when a dispute is going to happen. It just does. There's no way not to. You can't say that every contractual relationship you're ever going to enter into is going to be perfect. So how are you going to resolve the dispute? When they happen, not if. The dispute will happen. Guarantee it. Okay? So are you going to leave it to mediation, arbitration, litigation, fill in the blank? Like, this is why a carefully crafted contract is your best friend. You will be so much happier if you have a contract that matches your goals and considers different options rather than just the just leaving it up in the air. Okay, this is real. This is where you got to be. The next thing is forgetting to give yourself an out. What if the relationship doesn't work? Okay. Is notice sufficient? I don't know. This is why it's so important to have a relationship with in the contract to define it. How much notice? What about refunds? Okay. What if they decide to go a different way? What if it gets too expensive? Cost of labor now and materials has gone through the roof. Maybe a contract that you entered into 6 months ago to do something doesn't have the same luster as a contract that you need to do now. Maybe you need to change it. I don't know. These are all things that you need to think about when you're looking at a contract to protect yourself. The next thing is not defining what constitutes a breach. Is it strictly a money issue? Is it a performance issue? Is it a minor performance? Is it a major performance? Is it what's called a material breach, right? Like what are you going to define as a breach so that it's clear? The clearer you are in your contracts, the more consistent and defined, the happier the relationship will be. Because when in doubt, courts love a good contract. Okay, when something goes wrong, and it will, your contract is absolutely crucial to making sure you're protected. So you need to define specifically what constitutes a breach. And this is going to be different based on your industry, depending on your personal flavor, right? Like this is why, and I have to emphasize this, why contracts are so great, because they really create and you can craft them. You know, if you take a sculpture of the David, right, and you start out with a big block of granite or marble, I don't remember what it's made of, but anyway, you get the idea. If you take a sculpture, or if you're going to sculpture something, you start with the big block. Well, that's what a contract is. That's like the beginning of a contract, right? But then you can chisel away at it and make it into a beautiful, beautiful thing. Contract that represents your interest, that protects your business, that helps you run your business effectively. And I've said this in other issues. I've had so many people that have made mistakes in their contracts, and it ended up hurting them later because they had a poorly defined contract. And no contract is ever going to be perfect. Okay, it just doesn't exist. There's no perfect contract, but you need like better than good, right? Like, and that's one of the top reasons why that we talk about these things. So the next point is failing to define performance standards. What is acceptable? What's not? Is there a timeline that goes with that? So, for instance, generally accepted photography principles. I know I'm using that, but it's an easy one to use for most people to understand. So, the issue is you want to make sure that your performance standards are up, especially when it talks about construction or other types of industries where there's a generally accepted standard, okay? You want to talk about that in your contracts. The next thing, failing to set clear guidelines, such as time frame, number of revisions, modifications, or add-ons. So say you're working on a project with someone and their demands just become unreasonable. They're excessive. You bid it at, and I'm just using this as a for instance, you're a graphic designer and you bid a project at $500 and then they want 5 revisions. Well, what normally you would expect to have 2 revisions on, maybe 1 to 2, which is reasonable. If they want 5 because they're being difficult, if you didn't put that in your contract that, things are limited to 2 revisions, then people are going to potentially take advantage of you. And it's going to make that cost Instead of it being a profitable thing for you, it could be considered an unprofitable thing for you. It could be, instead of you making a profit of $250, $300, you could be losing money on it with as many revisions as that they take if it's not defined. Same things with the modifications. Okay. Most of my contracts, if I put in there, basically nothing else can be added or changed without something in writing. Okay. This is my next one. And this is something that I see happen all the time. People omitting important terms. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. Okay. So don't think by leaving it out. I actually had a client one time do this. They left stuff out of the contract thinking it would be better. No. Contracts, it's the exact opposite. The more defined a contract is, the better, the more it protects you. He ended up having to pay $6,000 because his contract was poorly written. He should have only paid $2,000. You can't make people do things, right? But you can always contract and make sure that the clear expectations happen in a contract. It's amazing. Like I said, contracts are one of my favorite things to talk about. The next thing, and this is if you're a business entity. So if you're an owner of an LLC or a corporation or anything that is not just you, one of the benefits of having a corporation or an LLC is that there's some liability protection, both contractually and other reasons. If you don't put in there that you are signing on behalf of the company and not yourself, the contract can be misconstrued to it being that you're liable for it as opposed to just the company, just your company. Make sure that everything that you want in a contract is important to you. Okay? Make sure that you're not leaving things out. Again, no contract is going to be perfect, but if you add enough to it, you will be a lot happier. Okay? So keep these types of things in mind, that it isn't just about, you can't conceive of every possible scenario, but you can conceive of a lot. Okay? So that's what's called being personally liable or becoming a personal party. Number 9, and this one is one of the most common problems that I see when I get contracts. When someone gives me a boilerplate contract to revise, most contracts you get off the internet are not worth the paper that they're printed on. I will caveat that with saying something is better than nothing, but not by much. And I'm not trying to be harsh about it. I'm being true. I'm being honest. Okay? You get a contract off the internet and it is so broad, right? It has to be broad. It has to be that because they don't know what you're trying to do with it. So it can't conceive of every possible scenario. So if you pick an internet contract, it's going to be vague, it's going to be broad, and it's not going to do the things that what it's intended to do. And you can end up losing thousands of dollars, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars by having a poorly written, drafted contract because it's a boilerplate contract. Now, that is not to say that you can't use some terms and some clauses out of a contract and make it your own. There's nothing that says that you can't do that. For the most part, there are some exceptions, some contract laws in some states and that type of thing. But contract law is very flexible. Okay. Not completely, but you get the idea. So maybe you start with the boilerplate as your base if you can't afford to hire an attorney to do it, which I highly recommend, whether it's me or anyone else. I'm not suggesting it has to be me. I'm talking about you need an attorney to draft a contract. You have to have an attorney? No, there's nothing that says that you do, but you should, right? All right, so number 10, and I need you to pay very close attention for this one. Having a contract at all. So many small businesses don't even have a contract. And it is sad. It is scary. It is bad. The reason why it's bad is because so many things can go wrong. And it can be very expensive for you. If you don't have a contract, it can cost you some serious money. With a contract, a good contract is worth way more, 10 times more than what the contract costs you to generate. Like easy, 10, maybe even 20. I'm going to say 20 times. A good contract is worth 10 to 20 times what you paid for it to be drafted, because of the amount of savings that you'll make, the clarity that you'll have, the fewer disputes that you'll have, all of these things that you have to need to consider as a business owner. If you don't have a contract, please go out and start the process. Find a local attorney. Like I said, a boilerplate is better than nothing, but not by much. So find a boilerplate. Even if it's $20, $30, not a great contract, it's not going to be great. I don't recommend them, but I get where you might come from when it comes to a money situation, okay? Money-wise, I totally understand, but then you need to invest in a good contract. If you're in business, you need a good contract, okay? So that's it. Those are the 10 things, and those are the things that are going to hurt you if you choose not to do them. Now, I can't make you do them. Nobody can. But please, I'm begging you, start taking your business seriously. Start investing in those types of things, contracts. If you've gotten value out of this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and like and notify that we go live Monday through Friday at 11. We'll see you later. Bye.